Hey guys, today I have another veteran bringback story. Now, most of the stories that I've done have been from the European theater. This one is from the Pacific theater, and I've got a nice assortment of stuff to show you. If you haven't watched my veteran bringback stories, they're among my favorite, and for a lot of you, your comments, you often say these are among our favorites. In this case, we're going to honor the life of Edward Cahill. I'm actually wearing his army jacket. He's a pretty good fit. Here's a picture of him. A lot like me, he's not a really big guy, so I thought one thing that I could do is to show you his arm length is about the same. And I could barely button that up, so he's a little thinner, but you know, my weight is all in my chest from working out so much, but nonetheless, I couldn't really button this up. Now, my goal here, some people will make comments about stolen honor. I am not putting on his jacket to demean him in any way. In fact, the opposite is true. I want to honor the life of Edward Cahill and his service to our country. You can see here he was a sergeant, and also he was in the 77th Infantry Division out of New York. He was actually born in New York City and lived there much of his life. Later moved over to North Jersey. A lot of people from New York move over to North Jersey. But then later in his life, he moved down to Dover, Delaware. We're going to take a look at his life and his service in the Army. Now, when I think of the Pacific Theater and the invasion of the islands of the Pacific, I think of the U.S. Marine Corps. In this case, it was the U.S. Army, 77th Infantry Division out of New York. Now, as I just mentioned, our goal here is to honor Sergeant Edward Cahill. And I actually have 4 bronze medals I'm going to go over and a little bit about his service, but also let me say a word about the vets. I don't have a lot of what he actually did in battle. I know where he was and I know he received awards and I have descriptions, but according to his son, he never really talked about the war, so he didn't have stories. I usually like to tell funny stories, heroic stories. I don't have stories about his service. But we were able to reconstruct where he was and what he did. If you have someone in your family, like I do, who served in the war, I think it's real important to tape record or write it down. It's good to get those stories if you can get them to talk about it. So I don't have a lot of stories, but I have some really cool things I want to show you, including the Japanese Nambu Type 14 that he brought back from the Philippines. I decided to lose the jacket because wool jackets in April are not ideal. But Ed came from a military family. This would actually be Ed's father, was in World War I. We found this among Ed's things. So this is Ed Sr. So just to back up and be clear, the guy who brought this to us was the son of Edward Cahill. And Edward Cahill was the son of this Edward Cahill. And you can see from the date, you see 1917 to 1920. So he served in World War I, and this was the only thing that I found about Ed Cahill Sr., who is also in the U.S. Army. Okay, back to Ed Cahill, who was a serviceman in World War II. He brought back this Nambu. I put on my gloves. They're a little dirty, but if you watched my April 1st video, you know I like to dig in the mud, and that's how they get dirty. He brought this home from the Philippines. Now, it was clear from what I read that he enlisted in about 1943. He attended training. I'm going to show you a little bit about that. And then his first campaign was Guam. So Guam, we already had soldiers there, and of course it had to be reinforced because it was going to be invaded by the Japanese. There's a lot of history there, and he was sent as a reinforcement to Guam. Not much written about what he did there. But it looks like from there he went to Lehi in the Philippines and was involved in the invasion of the Philippines, which happened on December 7th, same as Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, but of 1944. So he has a note that he captured this flag in December of 44. And this is a Japanese battle flag. And from what I understand, each unit would have their own battle flag, and the different soldiers would write well wishes, sign their names. We have some Japanese, I'll peek through the top here. We have some Japanese subscribers who could maybe tell us a little bit more about this, or if you collect Japanese items, He actually has two of these. This one came from the Philippines, and again, the note said December of 44. This is the second one in a little better condition and a little less writing. This one from Leahy, it looks like he went to Okinawa. Okinawa is actually part of Japan, kind of like Alaska or Hawaii is separated from the mainland, but it is still part of the United States. Okinawa is a part of the homeland. And Okinawa, they fought viciously, and that's actually the place you probably have seared in your brain, is the women and babies jumping off of cliffs, committing suicide rather than allowing themselves to be captured. But that all happened in Okinawa, and some of the most horrific scenes of the war. It seems he stayed in Okinawa for quite a while, and I'll show you some souvenirs that he brought back from Okinawa. But let's go back to the Nambu. So I mentioned the flag. The note says captured in December. This says, this had a note on it, said taken from a Japanese officer in June of 44. So we know he was in the Philippines, Leahy, in that area of the Philippines. He was there from at least December to June. And I know it's hot and humid. I've been to the Philippines, and in June it's unbearably hot and humid. And so let's talk a little bit about this Nambu. This is the only gun that he brought back. And so why don't you look over my shoulder and we'll check it out. So first and foremost, this is a clamshell holster named after the fact that it looks like a clamshell. We have brass fittings, which is, it's a wartime, proper wartime holster. And with the straps is very unusual. The straps usually would get dry rot and break. If you open this up, usually there is some Japanese writing right in here. In this case, it's pretty much worn away. At least I can't read anything there. Inside here, there is sometimes a box of ammo. In this case, it's empty. You can see some of the corrosion here. And when we take the gun out, it's an unremarkable gun, meaning that it shows a lot of wear. It's got the large, see, I'm getting it all over my hands. This is the larger variation of trigger guard, which they adapted for winter so that when they had their heavier gloves on, their finger would still fit. The grips do match the gun. And this one was made in the Nagoya factory. The serial number, and then the date. So 18, so you add 25 because it's the year of the emperor, but the year of the emperor 18 is actually 1943, and that's December of 43. So my guess is this would have been a young officer, fairly new to the service, because they had already invaded the Philippines in 41. He was handed this gun in 43, or actually probably 44. Immediately sent over to the Philippines, and then in June of 44, this was captured by Ed Cahill, Sergeant Ed Cahill. You can see the last three digits are 358, and if we look at the magazine on the back right here, it is not matching. If you open this up, obviously, you can see the cleaning rod. Let's put that here. You can see the cleaning rod right here. This is a nickel one. Later they went to just a blued piece of metal, but that's a nickeled one, so that's a little bit earlier variation. And then the spare magazine is down here. We would love to find out the spare magazine is matching, but in fact it is not. Neither magazine is matching. You can see 713 and 771. Now, the earlier magazines were nickeled, these are blued, so this would be the correct magazine for a 1943 gun. If we take a look at the quality of the bluing, you can see that this has corrosion. Again, it was in the Philippines, that contributes a lot to the corrosion. And again, the earlier one had a smaller trigger guard, and the small parts would have been straw colored. Here, they're just all blued. So it is appropriate for 1943, captured in June of 44. When you pull the cocking knob back, this holds it back when there's no ammo in it. If it's ammo, you pull it back, it'll slam forward and charge the round. These are a little bit awkward because the only way to close that now, and it does slam, I started to say it will slam, is it's very hard to pull this out often, but when you pull that out, that slams forward, and that's how you close the bolt. I've mentioned before that often the firing pins were broken. And in this one, probably, and even though it was probably only used for about a year, I believe the firing pin was broken, and I'm going to show you how I come to that conclusion. Cock it. You push this button down and unscrew it. And the firing pin will come out. Now, I wanted to show you on this that the cocking knob is numbered to the gun, and then also the bolt. Turn it this way. The bolt is numbered to the gun, 358. If we pull this out and I look at the firing pin, that tip will break off. I apologize again for my gloves, but I'm handling a dirty gun. You probably can't read that, but it is not matching. So I did check it out. The fact that it's not matching means it was switched. So what we can figure out, I'm a forensic scientist right now, what I'm figuring out is within a year of service, probably not used a whole lot, it already broke off one of the firing pins. And the holster comes with a spare firing pin, but in this case, the spare firing pin is gone. So he went through at least one firing pin in the first year of service. Okay, this was completely unplanned, but I happen to have this on my floor, so I thought I'd show it to you. Now this is a baby Nambu. These were made in the mid-20s, and so this would have been a much older officer who might have had this gun. That's the Tokyo factory. They only made several thousand of these. You can see this is number 5477. And you see the small parts. I mentioned the nickel magazine. You can see the two nickel magazines, and just to wow you a little bit, this particular Nambu, you see the serial number 4577. You see the beautiful finish, a little bit of corrosion there, which is common because again we're fighting in the tropics. If we look at the serial number on the back, you can see both matching magazines. So this is pretty cool, much better quality. Had nothing to do with Edward Cahill. He only wishes he had brought this one back. But let me show you some of the other things that he brought back that I think you'll find fascinating. This jewelry box came with all of the items in a box, and again, the son brought these over to us and asked us to make this video. This is just a jewelry box, has nothing to do with the war. But inside I found all kinds of treasures. We're going to talk about some of this. One of the really interesting things that goes with the gun is, I know it's all the way at the bottom, so I'm going to pull that up. So the very last thing is, and very rare, this is the capture paper for the gun. And the reason to say it's rare is in the European theater, there's much more incidences of people getting the capture papers. The majority, I would say, didn't bother, at least in the European theater. And island hopping, it seemed like the Wild Wild West. People, there was a lot of carnage, a lot of guns laying around, and some people just picked them up and brought them home. Very few people bothered to mess with the capture papers. But you can make out Edward Cahill here. Edward Cahill. There's no serial number, but it says Jap Pistol Model 14, and that's signed by his commanding officer. It has his rank as sergeant, so we'll take a look at his promotion in a minute. So his rank at that point was sergeant, and of course when I had his jacket on, you could see that he had the sergeant stripes. You also see he was in the 77th Infantry Division. Let's see what else is in here. Let's just go through it. This is going to be somewhat out of sequence, but we're putting a puzzle together. MP in Japanese and English tells me that he was there after the war ended, and probably in Okinawa or on the mainland of Japan, he served as an MP. So it's written in Japanese and in English. As you know, the American Army did occupy the Japanese islands, and I have a badge that says that he was part of the occupation. So I'm sure he wore this and was an MP. Well, I have pictures of some of his buddies. This is obviously on one of the islands. You can see the palm trees. These are his guys. He has their names on the back. Cahill is kind of smudged, but I think it's right here, which means he's in the front row, third one over. So that would be Edward Cahill right there. Again, there's his picture. These are some of his buddies, and he has the names on the back. This was a bunker hideout that that was in Okinawa. Bunker hideout. For some reason, he took a picture. Maybe something significant happened there. Again, some of his buddies with the names on the back. They're having some chow. I recognize this guy. He was on there before. Again, this was in Leyte. I keep saying Leahy, but it's Leyte, Philippine Islands, December of '44. This is the interior of a dugout, a Japanese dugout in Okinawa. I think it goes this way, and that would be the ceiling of this dugout. And then these are some aerial photographs of the battlefield in Okinawa. And I want to point these out because in a minute I'm going to read about one of his Bronze Stars was for doing sketches of the battlefield. These are clearly not his sketches, but he got a Bronze Star for bravery in doing sketches. We have his dog tags. If we look at this picture, these I believe marksmanship badges, and here they are right here. Yeah, sharpshooter, rifle, and hand grenade. And he has another one here for a pistol. So that was the 1911 Colt. And the reason I know that, here's his belt. A Boit 43, the ammo pouch and belt from 1943. So we know he carried a 1911 Colt. I would probably put a 1911 with this just for the heck of it. This, is, of course, is his unit patch. Here's his bracelet with his GI number on it. It's somewhat tarnished. Probably would barely fit on my wrist. Marksmanship, rifleman marksmanship badge, and some battle ribbons. Again, Pacific Theater, I mentioned Guam, Philippines, Okinawa. I see actually 5 Bronze Stars and then an arrowhead. I didn't know the meaning of arrowhead, but we looked it up and found out that that arrowhead was given if you were part of a aerial or naval assault. And so, of course, he was in a naval assault when he invaded the Philippines and Okinawa. So that's an arrowhead that says he was part of a naval assault. And then his Bronze Stars for bravery in action. We also have, with his Bronze Stars and a ribbon, we have the Pacific Theater Campaign. That's Atlantic Pacific Campaign. And this was a medal that he received. This medal is just that he fought in battle in World War II. See the reverse side. It's a basically says that he served in the American Army in 41 to 45. Again, this is a medal for the World War II American campaign. There's actually a picture of a submarine. And on the back, it has the dates, and that's another medal saying that he served in World War II. I do have the written citation for this. This is a good conduct medal. It just means he was honest and straightforward, but that's a good conduct medal. Fairly common. This is one of his Bronze Stars. And then, of course, every time he got a Bronze Star, they would give him the little one to go with it on his battle ribbon. But that is one of his Bronze Stars. The state of New York gave him a Service Cross. So that was another medal that he brought home. There's one that I wanted to show you that obviously was very important to him. And let me show you why I could say that. Now this one is wrapped like a Christmas present. And this is the medal for being involved in the liberation of the Philippine Islands. And you can see for the liberation of the Philippines. Now, I've been to the Philippines, and I have to tell you, the Filipino people are phenomenal people, friendly, kind. extremely considerate. And I believe that when he was in the Philippines, he must have fallen in love with the people, because he was awarded this medal and either lost it or never received it, because in 1991, he paid $7. So well after the war was over. So again, he either never received it or he had it and lost it. But he went to the trouble to write to the Office of Veteran Affairs. He said, I was supposed to get this medal. He paid $7. It took a while. He asked in October of 1990. It took him that long to get the medal. But this medal, I believe his battle in the Philippines and his time with the Filipino people was significant to him. And I know it was for me as well. One more medal, Japan, Army of the Occupation. This is why I believe that military police badge or armband belonged to him, because he was part of the occupation. There's the other reverse side. 1945, he was part of the occupation of Japan. Let me take a look at a couple of souvenirs he brought back from Japan, kind of trinkets, and they may be from Okinawa or it could be from the mainland. Okay, so these are included in all his stuff, and this has to be Okinawa. It could be the Philippines, the construction. Knives like this are used in the Philippines, cleaning out the jungle, kind of a lightweight one. But the reason I believe this was Okinawa is because of this little coin. It has Japanese writing on it, which I can't read, which tells me it probably came from Okinawa. And so it would have been like one of the native handcrafts that he probably picked up at a market. You know, we have our own virtual flea market, but they had markets that they would set up. People were dirt poor and hungry, and so they would sell trinkets to the GIs. Here's another obvious trinket. Everybody had to come back with a Japanese fan. And the local geisha house, I guess you could go there and get a bath and whatever else would go on. Album, so it's a picture album. Of course it's upside down, but we'll turn it over. And these are the pictures of the geisha girls. So he brought this back. Here's one in Western dress. It did break apart, but you kind of get, they were kind of accordioned in here. Don't worry, there's no nudity. Just pictures of pretty girls, and there's a guy that looks a lot like Count Dracula. One more item of significance. This, I believe, would have come from Okinawa. But it must have been given to him in friendship. So he made friends with some of the Japanese people there. And this is something that you would hang on your door. I know American servicemen, the house of a serviceman would hang this on their window. And this must have been something that he got in Okinawa or Japan. And he clearly made some friends there. If anybody can do some translation, that would be helpful. This looks like a person's name that we can read, and the rest of it. Now, if there's anything sorted on there, you might want to keep it, just write to me privately. I found this letter from the Veterans Administration, and he kept a lot of mementos inside there. Looks like he served from 42 to 45. This was mailed in 47. But a couple things I wanted to point out. This was kind of a receipt for all of his medals. We can see bronze arrowhead for this invasion. It mentions Leyte in December 7th of 44, 4 bronze service stars, and mentions other campaigns. Good Conduct Medal, another bronze medal previously awarded. The Liberation of the Philippines ribbon, 2 bronze service stars, Philippine Independence ribbon, and the Philippine Presidential Unit Citation. This is a list of some of the medals that he received. This is a letterhead from his unit, 77th Infantry. There's clippings from magazines and newspapers, which this looks like their 77th units. It would be like their newsletter, and there's a commemoration. war in Japan was still going on. So this is during the war. It's a newsletter that comes with it. Okay, this I found interesting. It was while I think he was still in the United States, 1943. Remember I said he was in training? Remember I said his father was in World War I. Here's a Western Union telegram to private, so this is before his promotion, and requesting your request a furlough. Dad, to have a serious operation, June 22nd, Red Cross will verify, signed mother. So his father, who was in World War I, evidently was having a serious operation. This is kind of a sad telegram to get while you're in the service, but it looks like his father was dying. It looks like he did get a furlough and went home. And I presume that his father died at that point before he was shipped out to Guam. Okay, I think I'll wrap up with this citation. This is one of his Bronze Star medals, and this is in October of '45. And we can start here. Sergeant Cahill accomplished his assigned task and those for which he volunteered in an outstanding manner. On several occasions during the Okinawa operation, Sergeant Cahill volunteered to go to the front lines in order to obtain a clear picture of the ground to the division's front, so that he would be better qualified to produce sketches of the terrain. The resourcefulness and initiative he displayed in keeping situation maps and in the preparation of operational and intelligence documents contributed materially to the success of the division. Sergeant Cahill's technical ability, willingness to work long hours, and devotion to duty under adverse condition reflected great credit upon himself and on the military service. Now, it talks about his technical skills. When I was looking through his mementos and souvenirs that he brought back from the war, I found this. So looking at this, you can see that he was a draftsman. It has his name on it, and 7 of 41. So before the war, he was a draftsman, and therefore, he was the one who volunteered and made sketches of the battlefield ahead. It helped to direct mortar and artillery fire and contributed to the overall success in the Battle of Okinawa. Okay, I said I was wrapping up. I wanted to wrap up with a tribute to him, but I also have to do a tribute to his sense of humor in bringing back these items as well. First of all, there is a very nice Japanese bayonet that would go on an Arasaka. You can see the Tokyo Arsenal symbol. This is in excellent condition. Not so much his sense of humor, but this would be. He brought back this grenade. We did check and it is inert, but this is one of the souvenirs he brought back after the war. This piece is kind of broken, but it does unscrew, and fortunately there's no powder inside. You can pull the pin, however. We surprisingly sell a good many of these inert, we hope, inert grenades. And then 2 of these, which I have no idea why anybody would, well, you know what? I'm just, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, he's a draftsman. Maybe he found these fascinating, but these look like they would go to a bomb. It would spin the bomb, and this would be the fuse. I guess when the spinning stops, the fuse lights the bomb. You can see the Japanese symbols. So I have no idea why he brought these home, but it could be, you know, to reconstruct the technology or do drawings of how their bomb fuses worked. But he has 2 of these as part of his souvenirs, kept them all these years. This would be a great thing to bury and have my metal detector go and dig these up out of the dirt. That's an inside joke for those of you who watch my channel. Hey, thanks for watching. That's our tribute to Sergeant Edward Cahill. Thank you for your service, and to all of those of you who served. And remember, if you can get people to record what they did in the war, that would be a big help. And feel free to share your stories with Legacy Collectibles. We love to honor our veterans, and it just reminds us of how expensive our freedom can be.